Here's how to use the Adkins Inline 800 in automatic mode. Before starting to print and use the Inline 800, it's a good idea to feed out from your printer around 400 to 500 millimeters of DTF film. This will allow you to feed the film into the shaker curer without scratching the prints and damaging the prints as you do so. Then you can start your printing, and you want to wait until you've got sufficient amount of film out of the printer to be able to put into the powder curer unit. Once your DTF film starts to reach the floor, then you should have a sufficient amount of film to start putting it into the machine. I'll place that in the machine. And I don't yet have a sufficient amount of film to pull it back up and put it onto the vacuum roller, so again, I'll wait for a few minutes. Once you have a sufficient amount of film inside the unit, what you want to do is open the top cover, the powder tray cover, pull through some more of the film until the film reaches the vacuum roller. Place the film onto the vacuum roller and try and do this as straight as possible. Hold it on with one hand while you then turn the fan function on the panel. The fan function is the vacuum on the roller, and then you want to wait a little while longer until you have enough film to fill the powder weight trough, and you push the film down to the bottom of that powder weight trough. At this point, you want to move the media guides into the edges of the film. Those media guides stop too much powder falling off the film while it's being shaken. There is a media guide either side of the system. At this point, you're ready to turn the automatic function on the machine. The machine will apply a little bit of powder to the film in the trough just to weigh it down, but it's then going to wait until a sufficient amount of film, more film is printed and covers the photo sensor at the front of the machine. At that point, the machine will apply the right amount of powder for the prints, and then at this stage, the feed of the machine will pull the film through. So now our film has drooped enough to cover the film sensor. The machine has applied some powder, and now it senses there is sufficient amount of powder. The machine has started to feed the media through and cure the prints. We now wait until it's reached the exit end of the machine, where we can take the film and web it onto the take-up unit. At this point, your machine is now in partial auto mode whilst we wait for the film to reach the take-up device. Once the film exits the tunnel, it might want to come flat and horizontal above this, so just push it down, because it should go behind this unit and down the vacuum plates on its way to the take-up. Once your film has exited the tunnel and has reached the take-up device, you'll need to turn off the roll function so this isn't spinning while you're trying to attach the film to it. It is also advisable to pause your printer for a few seconds to allow you time to attach the film to the take-up device. Now we've turned off our roll and we've paused our printer just for a second or so, we can attach the film to the take-up device. It needs to go behind the tension sensing bar and underneath the tension sensing bar, and then needs to be pulled back up in the front of that bar. Then you can position your film so it's centralised coming out of the tunnel. Use a sufficient amount of tape, sticky tape, to tape it on. Start in the centre and then pop the tape on the outsides after that. Again, ensure you've got tension, ensure it's taped to the take-up as straight as you can make it. With 800 wide film, it can be advisable to use 5 pieces of tape. With 600, you may only need the 3. Just make sure it's fully attached to the take-up device. At this stage, we can unpause our print and turn the roll function on. There are 3 conditions for auto mode to work. Firstly, you have to have some film drooping down between your printer and the Inline 800 for that sensor to pick up film and the machine to know that there is film to be pulled through. Secondly, there then has to be a weight of powder detected and sensed by the powder weight trough. And the third condition for automatic mode to work correctly, the oven has to be at the set temperature. Now that the film is fully attached to the take-up device, we're running in full auto mode. This means that the film is being brought through the machine by the take-up roller. It's this that's pulling the film through. As you can see, the belt is now running backwards. So the film is no longer being fed through and pushed through the media by the belt, but rather it's being pulled through the machine by the take-up device. At that point, the feed speed controls the speed of the revolutions of the take-up device as opposed to the feed speed of the belt. How then do you ascertain what the correct temperature and speed are for your prints? Well, this will vary from printer to printer and based on your quality settings, i.e. the feed speed the media is coming out of your printer. Initially, what you want to do is match the feed speed of the powder curer Inline 800 with the speed that the film is being fed out of the printer. To do this, what you want to do is set a feed speed that roughly allows the droop of the media to not change so much. You can use a tape measure or you can judge this by eye. So at the bottom of the droop of media, my gap to the floor is about 400 millimeters. While the machine is feeding, that gap shouldn't sufficiently raise, and crucially, it shouldn't shrink. It should stay around that gap there. If it is, you've got the right feed speed. If the gap is shrinking, then the feed speed on the unit is too slow and needs to be increased. If that gap raises and the powder curer machine constantly pauses for long periods of time, then this is running faster than your printer and should be slowed down. Once you've ascertained the correct feed speed for your printer and the settings you're using, you then simply need to ensure that the heat temperature for that speed is sufficient to cure your powder and your prints given the speed setting that you're using. So you have a look at the prints as they come out of the exit of the tunnel and check that they're cured properly. If they're coming out a little powdery and could do with a bit more curing, simply increase the heater temperature as you've been shown earlier in the video. If they're coming out slightly yellow and slightly over-cured, decrease that heat temperature as you've been shown earlier in the video. Whilst your system is running, if you notice your powder warning light flashing, it means that you have insufficient powder in your initial powder trough. That powder does collect inside the machine in the powder recycle trough at the bottom. So simply pull that out, use your spare trough to put inside the system where your main trough came from. So whilst you continue to print and it continues to create excess powder, that can go in the trough, whilst you then use the main trough to top up your powder and recycle your DTF powder. Once that's filled up, pop your spare trough back in that second slot and the machine can continue to be used. Once you've finished printing all of your jobs, you'll notice that your machine will pause. This is because it's in auto and it hasn't seen sufficient film to pull through the machine because you've finished printing. So what you do at this stage is to put the machine in link mode. This turns off the front sensor and tells the machine to ignore it and simply pull through what remains of your print. Before you do that, you'll want to feed out around 600 millimeters of DTF film from your printer. This is so that the back edge of your film doesn't fall into the powder trough, roll up, catch your prints and cause them damage. So scroll out that 600 millimeters or so of film from your printer. Then you want to cut that off. So my Mackie TX F300 has the ability to do that. And then be very careful with the rear edge of the film. You don't want that rolling up into itself and damaging and smudging your prints. So gently place that on the floor, underneath your printer if necessary. And then you can turn on your link mode so that once that rear edge comes off the film sensor, the machine will continue to pull that through to cure it and take it onto the take-up device. Once the last part of your film has been pulled through the machine and wound around the take-up device, you'll want to put the machine back into manual mode. This will turn all of the functionality apart from the heat off. At this point, switch the feed back on so the belt and the vacuum roller continue to turn, and leave the system with the heat and feed function both activated for around 15 to 30 minutes. This will allow the smoke and the byproducts of the DTF process that are inside the oven hood to be extracted by the fans in the filtration door.